This is about maintaining focus in today's Unplatoonic Melee segment. What do you think is. Well, before we get to the issue, introduce yourself. Oh, how long have you been playing? How
So,
has it been? What makes you realize that this is a problem? And what gives?
so, my tag's Witcher.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing for about. My first tournament was about 4 years ago. So most of college. I got into melee with a buddy freshman year, and he dropped out, but I kept with it. And I at first my goal was be top 100 because everybody like, oh, I want to be the best at this game.
Mm-hmm.
But as I started to get better and better, I first 2 years I had a routine and I just stuck with it, and I didn't change the routine to sort of adapt to like what was happening. I just followed like an online guide, so I didn't really get better my first 2 years. I just had like tech skill, and I would spam the same thing, and if you wouldn't lose to that thing, it would just sort of I would lose if you didn't fall for those things. So I really wouldn't adapt. It was more like just the cardboard cutout, and if you fit through the hole in the wall, you sort of like beat me. But the last, I guess, since Slippy came out, has been the main thing. I've been focusing more on like mentality stuff. I've had less of a consistent practice routine and more of I've been more flexible with it. But I just recently, in like the last 4 months, I've found myself getting more and more tilted at certain patterns. I still have a very patterned playstyle where like I like to think through and have a game plan, and I will just focus on that game plan. I try to like not do adaptations. So I I'm of the philosophy where you do your thinking of overarching strategies before the game, and if you don't sort of uh, know how to deal with a situation, you're not going to really figure it out in the course of 3 or 5 games if you get that far. So recently, I've found out that if I'm losing to something, I will get really, really tilted in game, and it could be a product of like how I've sort of trained my mindset to go into things. But now it's to the point where I start making excuses about the character. Like recently, I've been having trouble against Fox running away, and I'll start chasing him, and like, oh my god, you start making excuses for yourself. You start saying the other character's broken. You start beating yourself up. So what I want to get guidance on is how to step back a little bit from those, even just to have more fun when just playing friendlies, because it started to happen randomly on net play too, so it's getting worse, not better. So like, and that's really hurting my tournament performance when I run into a character or I get tilted. That in winners I will stay tilted until like losers for a few matches too. So it's not the best situation for me.
Yeah, it affects your tournament performance.
Yeah, it affects my tournament performance and just my fun with the game.
Yeah.
Which that's the reason I play the game now. It's have an outlet to improve and try to get PR and try to get PR in my region.
Yeah, that's fine enough motivation and goals. I have a question to ask you. It sounds like this is something that's more recent, like the last 4 months. What about your like earlier years of playing? Like, did that not happen?
It was more like I'm summing up those. I would get tilted then, but that was just because of the play pattern. I wasn't. It's not the same sort of deal. Like I would get tilted then, but it wouldn't be. I wouldn't get tilted and make excuses about the character. Like that's what like even if I find a solution for the situation in game, like Cheek's just throwing needles and I jump over it, or I meet her with a fair in midair, or read her timing or something like that. Even if I figure that out, it sets me on a cycle like this character's free, blah blah blah. They don't have to work for their punishes, etc. etc. But earlier it would just be like I can't beat this option, and I would just lose to that option.
And like the resolution there would be like, okay, how do I beat that option?
Exactly. But now it's more like I'm complaining about a character and it's a mindset.
Yeah, I mean, what changed? Like, do you feel like you're good enough to like beat those options, but like you still can't?
Yeah, I think I started to judge players more.
Hmm.
I'm at a level where like I'm good enough to get PR wins, but So if someone below what I've consistently beats me, it'll get under my skin a little bit, but also they improve. So I'm trying to get that, but also skill level plays a part in it too, I guess. Like if I'm getting beat by someone I don't think I should be, I'm judging more than I should be, or like making myself downtrodden.
Yeah, and did this happen more recently because like now you're starting to have a more flexible routine, and then therefore like you're still losing, and it's like, oh, it can't be my fault at this point, that kind of
Yeah,
mindset.
yeah, exactly. And I'm sort of at a point where I'm trying to work on my mentality because I think that's a major part of me holding me back because I stick to too solid of a structure. You know what I mean? I like have a game plan and I won't deviate from it if it like one part's not well thought out, or even
Yeah,
if a good read, I won't go for it.
and then your game plan fails, and then you gotta start making excuses like, well, my game plan failed, it's not my fault at that point. So is that like kind of more along the lines of what you're thinking?
No, more like I will admit I will need to adjust my game plan, and I guess I fall back on that as an excuse. So I don't see that I'm getting tilted.
Wait, so then why would you get tilted?
Because I lose to the option, or I get tilted because I'm getting annoyed of the character, or I'm making more excuses about the character.
Okay. So, all right, I have a better idea of like why you would get tilted, and why it's becoming more of an issue more recently as opposed to like earlier on, where like perhaps you had like more of a like a flawed routine, and that's why like I guess you didn't feel justified to make excuses, but now you feel more justified to make excuses. Is that like a right kind of?
I think it could be. Like I think when I improved, I'm more of I am putting more stakes into it.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you've been making bigger commitments the last 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that naturally, raises the stakes. And when things don't go your way, it will definitely frustrate you.
Hmm.
Yeah. So let me think about this a little. So your reasons for playing the game is that primarily for fun, right?
I enjoy it. It's an outlet to like I enjoy when I improve. I have a background in card games, so when I used to play card games when I was like 10. I played Yu-Gi-Oh, and I would just play that all the time. So I love the melee on a fundamental level because there's a level in card games where you start to figure out the interactions, and then you know so much you're able to make decisions based on the interactions of the metagame, quote unquote. And melee, it's you do that, but you do that in real time, and you can do that match to match, but you're not restricted by a card says this, so I have to play this card. You know what I mean? It's more of an abstract sandbox sort of thing.
Yeah, you like melee because it's fun, right?
Exactly.
And then what makes it not fun?
When I put too much stakes into it, when I'm getting tilted or I'm making excuses, like that just ruins my fun completely. Like when I
Yeah.
get tilted.
Too much stakes. And then like, all of a sudden what's supposed to be like a sandbox abstract kind of thing to have fun with, now like some decisions are more important than others. It's hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes me disappointed in myself.
Yeah, so is your main reason for playing melee primarily for fun or primarily for improvement? Or like, competing, being in local PR? Because like, initially you said that you wanted to play melee to be top 100 level, but
Yeah,
I don't know, it didn't feel like you really put too much stock in that.
exactly. That's why I sort of petered off and tried to focus more on like I didn't come at it from the right perspective on the first time, at least for where I was at. You know?
Right, so like you play melee for fun, and like do you have like aspirations with this game?
Yeah, I want to be top 5 in my region, and then after that, if I have enough time, I want to shoot for top 100.
Okay. So you play Melee for fun and also to improve, right?
Yes, for the feeling of improving. That's why it's like a shorter term goal.
Yeah, and why does improvement matter to you?
Because I enjoy the feeling of finding out the next step in that little interaction. Like this process of discovery is reward.
Okay. So that makes this kind of clear that like you really want your reason for playing Melee is to improve. You love the feeling and like, seeing yourself accomplished. Playing Melee itself is pretty fun on a fundamental level. And then what's not fun is like the stress aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Why does so do you get tilted in friendlies, like low stakes
Yes.
friendlies? You're just playing unranked, and you
It,
say yes.
it sometimes I will get tilted at like I'm a patient player. Like I will kill sheep with an up throw at 230 sort of deal. But also I will get like if I judge a player to be worse than me, and then I start to lose, like I was 3-stocking them, and then they bring it back and they 3-stock me the next game, and then 3 games later they keep 3-stocking me. I will put that on myself. So that's a situation where I get tilted.
Yeah, so you still get tilted despite it,
Yeah, but if
not
someone
being
better
too
than
much
me
of
that
stakes.
I know is better, then I won't get tilted. So like,
But regardless, so it's not just about the stakes. It's something else.
yeah,
Although the stakes do amplify it, though. Probably.
yeah, it's like I feel like I've improved. So why am I still getting beaten by this?
Yeah, so it goes beyond, adding stakes. It's, I guess, like, feeling like you don't deserve getting hit by this, in a way, is what I'm hearing.
I understand, like, even if it's like a 50-50, you're going to get hit by it sometimes. Or, like, you got to be willing to get hit by those things.
Hmm.
But,
And let me just make one more thing clear. Like, before I go on, it sounds like you want to have a rigid game plan, right? And
yeah,
it should be followed.
I want to understand the matchup well enough that I know what to do off it.
Yeah, the rigid game plan must be followed. And like when it starts to get violated or like it's not going out how you like, then it results to tilt.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because if my game plan falls, everything's going to crumble. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to get away from that, but it's still a very core part of it.
Yeah, okay. I think I know where to go with this now. Do you know the concept of ego?
Yeah.
What is it?
So,
Because I have my own definition of it.
yeah. To me, ego is you put pride or you put your stakes into it, and it's how good you feel you are.
So basically, it's like an idea of who you are.
Yeah, like your expectations about the game and how you think things should be.
What do you think is a more broad way of putting this?
A more broad definition of ego.
Yeah, this is a very specific, a specific idea of ego. There's
So-
more to this. Like you don't have to have pride or stakes to have an ego.
Mm-hmm. What you think should happen.
Yeah, I think that's what you think should happen. Yeah, what should happen.
Yes.
In other words, it's like a fantasy, right?
Exactly. It's all in my head. Like I make it.
Yeah, like I want this to happen because this is like an idea that I really want followed, right? And then what happens when that fantasy doesn't align with reality?
You have a disconnect, and then that disconnection is when I get tilted.
Yeah, and it leads to an emotional reaction.
Exactly.
And that is what's happening with you, is that you have this rigid game plan that must be followed. At least, maybe other things as well. And like, these expectations that like you have upon like, oh, I've been putting this way more seriously, and why am I not getting this result? And because this like fantasy in your head is not aligning with reality, that gets you tilted.
Yes.
What do you think of all of this?
I think that's pretty accurate. And I'm looking for ways, like when I am tilted, to take a step back or ways to frame it in my head before I do that so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so now that we know that this is an ego problem, how would you go about this?
How would I go about relieving
Right,
it?
like, what is like a pattern that you act like, because a lot of smashers actually do have the right idea on like how to deal with ego. I'll tell you a wrong answer. It's going on Twitter. That's don't do that.
Oh yeah, social media is pretty toxic.
But actually, like before Twitter, a lot of smashers actually like kind of they implicitly do the step right. Just notice like from all those Saul compilations, like what do they do?
Take a step back, take a breath.
Yeah, the solution is that they just go away for a little while. And why does going away help?
Because your mind's not on it.
It's like the fantasy no longer matters.
Yeah.
And like once they realize after after they throw their controller or something, they've been walking around and they realize that they just are in their head, they just return to reality and then they just play. They're normal.
Yeah.
And obviously you can't do this mid match, but maybe say after a game where like so many things went wrong. What does just conversing of nature sound like?
I don't understand.
Just taking a walk.
Yeah, it just sounds like giving it a break.
Yeah, because not just like a break, like a full-on break, but the reason why breaks can sometimes work is because they're detaching themselves from whatever fantasy that they've built up in their head, and they just accept reality for what it is. But obviously, that is like a really roundabout way of going about it. Like smashers do get it right, but then they just stop there.
Yeah.
They think that like
myself. Yeah.
they think the permanent solution is to just take like a month-long break every time.
Yeah, and it's not really sustainable. Like, if I will play net play or I'll play friendlies for hours, and then I'll get tilted, and then I take a break for an hour, and then
Right.
I want to keep practicing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I'm sure like that hour-long break did help, but like
exactly. But
It's- yeah.
the same problem keeps happening after I take a.
But what's the idea here to take away? Like, why does taking a break even help?
Because you reframe it, and it's your expectations. You realize your expectations don't meet reality, and you quit putting stakes into them, or you quit.
Yeah, you just align your fantasy to equals reality.
Yes.
Whereas like, oh well, actually, when you take a break and take a step back, things just what they are. When you take a break, it's easier to accept. Now, how do we fast track that? How do we make it so then like you just don't have to take a break every time? Do you have any ideas? Have you ever like done something like this?
I need to restructure the way I think.
No, like have you ever like done something like this where like have you ever had any methods where you make your fantasy reality?
Where like I take my head off of it.
Yeah, like untilt.
Sometimes I'll give it 10 minutes. I'll go to the bathroom. I'll meditate for like 5 minutes or something like that, and then I'll come back. And if I'm still tilted, I'll give myself a whole. I'll just take the rest of the day off.
Yeah, so understand that when you try to, tone down your fantasy to better align reality, that takes time. That takes effort. That takes practice. This is like telling you, oh yeah, this is how you L cancel by doing this timing and doing that, but you won't immediately do it. because like it's like building a muscle. It's like building muscle memory. In the same way that like you said that you meditated upon this and like it still wouldn't really work, and then you tried it more time. Yeah, when you do it for the first couple times, it will take time. It will not be fast. But over time, when you do it multiple times, it can become faster and faster.
Okay.
So what do you think is the next step whenever you feel like you get in a tilt situation?
Think about why I'm tilted and how that doesn't align with reality.
Yeah. So like why, and then like what's the next step? How do you facilitate that?
What's causing this? So like identify it, like why am I getting tilted, and then sort of lead into.
Well, you already identified why, but then what do you do after
how
that?
to not let it happen again.
Well, here's the thing: is that like you already feel tilted.
Mm-hmm.
How do you accept that?
Take your mind off the thing.
How? Because you can't lie to your emotions. The goal is to, by the way, the goal is to not necessarily, be a Zen Buddhist and like never feel any emotions. Like that's not the goal. I'm not telling you to become a sociopath.
Exactly. The goal is to make so like you'll still get annoyed at the game.
Yes.
Reality, but it's so you can still keep playing. It's like learning tournament nerves, but the opposite direction with like.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas on how you could accept this tilt and move on?
Try to reframe it as something else, maybe.
So there's a concept called facilitating,
Okay.
where facilitating you already kind of already said the solution yourself, but it's like taking a deep breath. It's like meditating.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a deep breath and then just facilitate it. What do you think of that?
So, facilitating sort of like easing myself off the subject and realizing it's not there.
Like what?
So, like the process so far would be, I'm tilted, identify why, and then take my meditation or take my 5 minutes.
Well, yes, if you really need those 5 minutes, go ahead. But I'm talking about like mid-set here. Like you are recognizing that you tilt. What's the best thing that you could do?
Focus on something I can fix. Like, take my focus and put it into something else.
Yeah, that is one way to facilitate. What I'm getting at is that to better manage your emotions, you could take a deep breath. To like kind of like take a step back to better align your fantasy to become reality.
Okay.
Or, align your fantasy to better match reality.
Mm-hmm.
Or like when you take a deep breath, you're a little bit out of your head. Accept that like this is what's currently happening, and then move on with some resolve. Be like, okay, this is happening. What's the next best thing I could do? You said that you wanted to maintain focus. So you can move on with resolve to focus.
Okay.
What do you think of all this?
I'm trying to think, like, so I'm mid-match. I think I'm better than the guy. He imps me or whatever, blah, 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 blah. I end up getting 3 stars. I'm just trying to put myself in that headspace. And then trying to go over it again. So, like, identifying why it's because he made a comeback on me. And then trying to imagine myself breathing deeply. And then trying to focus on... I'm struggling to... I guess focus.
What up?
Like if I can't grab on something to focus on immediately. Like should I be like imagining Um, should I be imagining like something specific to focus on, or should I just be trying to like clear my head and then just look at the game? You know what I mean?
So actually, I kind of like mix up the step a little. Um, the why should actually be over here. It should be like after you facilitate, because when it's really hard to think rationally during a tilt, right?
Yeah, it is.
So what's the best way to, deal with an emotional problem? It's not through logic. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you don't think.
Yeah,
You're not. When
you're feeling.
Yeah, you're not you when you're hungry, like a Snickers commercial. But
And like those Snickers commercial, how do you resolve it? It's your feeling, right?
yeah,
And how do you manage feelings?
with a process and
What is the process?
what we're outlining here.
Yeah, which is
Breathe deeply, and then identify it, and then get something else to focus.
yeah, breathe deeply is facilitating.
Yes.
It's a metaphorical Snickers bar.
It's just as good too.
Yeah. And then when you facilitate through deep breaths, then you can identify, oh, this is why I'm feeling tilt, and I must move on.
Mm-hmm.
I must move on with the resolve to focus. Because, yes, it sucks that my fantasy is not aligning with reality. It's pretty normal to feel some kind of tilt when, like, all that you worked for, your game plan, just doesn't translate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very human feeling, you know that, right?
Yeah, loss of control.
Yeah. But then when you take a step back and facilitate that tilt, that's okay. You just need to move on, and you just also need to move on and resolve to focus.
Okay.
So the goal here, if you notice, like, I'm not telling you to not be tilted. You will feel tilt, after this talk. However, the best thing you could do is to facilitate it, taking a step back for a little moment, and then move on with resolve.
Okay.
You're like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I want to feel instead. I want the feeling of resolution. I need to focus because that's what I really want to focus instead. You want to focus mid-set, right?
Yes.
So you need to move on with some form of resolution.
Do you find that saying it in your head helps framing it, or is it just different for people?
It could help.
So, like, do you find that saying it out loud in your head?
Yeah. What do you mean by that? Can you expand?
So, like, if say I'm tilted, and just do you think saying it verbally, like I'm right now, I am tilted?
Yes. If you verbally say it, that helps it easier to recognize.
Yeah, because like I think I know a little bit about the process. I was very fuzzy on the details.
Yeah, make it obvious because like the first step is recognition, and if you make it obvious that you're tilted, then you could very easily address it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do recommend like verbally say, "Oh, I am tilted," and then take the next step to facilitate. Take a deep breath. Take as many as you need, and then go on like, "Why did I feel this way?" And then you need to move on with focus. And when you get really good at this, the cool thing here is that when you get really good at this, you don't need to take a deep breath anymore. I could speak with this with experience that like a lot of times whenever I feel tilted, like I don't need to take that deep breath because I've recognized it for so long and I'm just facilitating towards like, okay, this is what I feel and that's okay. I need to move on.
Yeah, because it's a practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've practiced it so much that I don't need to take a deep breath because I've recognized it so many times.
Could I practice this when I'm not tilted too?
Yeah, totally. When you visualize situations from the past that happened, and then you realize like, oh yeah, this is what happened. Like, say you do something called journaling, where you write down what you felt throughout the day, and then you realize like, oh, I felt this way. I could visualize that, and then like ideally say what I want to feel instead. Something like that. So yes, it is possible to practice. And it doesn't have to relate to necessarily just Melee. It can relate to every other aspect of your life as well.
Yeah. Because like normally if I have a habit of like if I get tilted or something bad happens, I will just not resolve it and I will just move on without resolving it.
Mm-hmm.
Build up, just sort of tuck it away. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's not resolving the problem at all.
Exactly. It's just hiding.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess, like, so it'll happen regardless. So I need to feel that feeling first before I'm able to actually.
You need to recognize the feeling.
So I don't even need to, I just need to identify it. Like,
yes.
It might happen. Or it is happening and that's why I'm able to identify.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you facilitate.
Or letting your mind drift off or taking a deep breath.
I wouldn't really say letting your mind drift off is facilitating. Like, taking a deep breath is like accepting that like this is what you're feeling and you're just letting it cool a little.
Okay. Sort of just letting it simmer.
Yeah.
And like you just don't touch it for a second and then have something to move your mind towards after.
Yes.
Okay.
Like you feel the rest of your tilt, and after you're done, you gotta move on. Alright? Like you have a reason why you're playing the game. You need to channel why you're playing. Yeah, like you said Melee's fun. You like improving. So you use that as your resolve to move on, It's all connected. It's like that's why I asked why you play the game. Your resolution for playing the game, like it might seem out of nowhere why like, oh, what resolve? Well, your resolve is why you play the game.
No, I completely understand. I was in wrestling as a
Yeah, but just for other people that might be watching.
Yeah.
So, what do you feel about all these steps?
I feel like we enumerated like good steps and good ways to sort of connect from one step to another and little tips here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And like practicing is the most important part about this.
Yes. If you really, really want this to stick, you do this every day.
Exactly.
If you don't do it every day, the progress would be significantly slower. Just like, real solo practice with Melee.
Or like just muscles, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's just like building a muscle.
Yeah, you got to keep going after you get jacked.
Yes.
And then the other thing is, it's sort of related to like, once I'm in sort of the refocused state, how do you generally find, like when you're in flow state, how are you identifying these patterns? Or like, how are you refocusing yourself onto these things? Are you just like sort of channeling most of your sight? Or you like, is it a physical thing where you're like scooching forward?
I'm not sure what question you're asking. Are you asking how do you know that you're in a flow state?
No, like once you're in flow state, so like once you've facilitated back into refocusing,
mm-hmm.
how do you identify something to focus on what is mattering inside of it? You know what I mean?
Like what matters in a match?
Yeah.
Well, that all depends on your game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the optimal thing to do in this matchup? It sounds like that was the plan that you want all along, right? What's the best thing to do in a matchup, and you gotta focus on that.
Okay.
Yeah, focus on your game plan. What should you be doing? And that's something that hopefully you already answered before, And if you don't know,
That's
sign
what
up for
the
my
game plan
lessons.
is, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, that's what the game plan is.
Yeah.
I guess from there, recognizing that the game plan is going to have holes too.
Ideally, it shouldn't. But like, if it has
Yeah.
holes, then you better address it as soon as possible.
Exactly. But like mid match.
Yeah, mid match, you have to accept that and try to work with what you got.
Mhm.
Like, okay, yeah, my game plan's flawed. Here's the next best thing I could do.
Yeah. And then I think my last question is, how do you just keep a learning perspective, like during friendlies? So like say I'm not refocusing on my game plan, I'm focusing on trying something out.
Well, it would help by, I guess you could say it out loud, like verbally say, why am I doing this?
Okay.
Just verbally say it. Like, verbally announce your intention. So that you make it obvious. Right? Just say, verbally announce, I'm planning to learn. Right?
Mhm.
And then you try it. And, say you're thinking that you're going to, just say so. That I am trying to learn. What do you think might go wrong?
Because when I play to try to learn, I've run into this tilt situation where I lost, or like I didn't understand it well enough, and I don't give myself like sort of credit. Like I'm like I should have known this already.
So what do you think you need to do then when you get tilted?
Just go through our process. So
What's the process?
breathe deeply,
Yeah, facilitate.
facilitate,
Yeah,
why it happened,
yeah, facilitate.
onto something.
Why, and then your resolve.
Mhm.
And your resolve is is that you want to learn, right?
Exactly.
What other issues do you think might pop up? Unless you think that's the only one. Well, at least the primary one.
Um.
If you don't have anything else, I mean, like, this sounds like, the first thing you said is tilted, and, like, sounds to be, like, the big issue. And I think if you could overcome this, your focus will be better. Your learning perspective will be better.
Yeah, getting tilted is a core tenet of like what is. It's a constant factor in like things that go wrong with like whether I'm trying to learn it or whether I'm trying to competitively focus in a game plan scenario, or if something doesn't go right, blah blah blah, it didn't go according to plan, and sort of re-going into that. I'm trying to think of if there's another axis that, like the learning perspective thing, this could be approached from.
Maybe, but, you can only find out by trying.
Exactly. I'm trying to think. I'm just thinking through like when I get tilted, like they're learning. I'm playing to learn. I'm playing for a game plan, and then I'm trying to think if like I am getting tilted for any other like reason. Like
Even if there's other reasons, what do you think is a step?
I say that one more time.
Yeah, even if you're potentially getting tilted for other reasons, what do you think is a step? Like, do you think the steps outlined will just still work?
I guess I worry if I'm doing them right. If I'm doing it, like if it's not immediately resolved, I sort of get. It's kind of funny. I get tilted at being tilted. Like I get mad at myself for not being able to fix it immediately. Instant gratification.
Yeah, I mean,
So how
that's
would
a fair kind of concern. That like you're just worried that this isn't gonna work. But the only way to actually like know to find out. And have you ever thought that doing the optimal thing, the optimal learning process, is by messing up?
like I know that, but I can't accept. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what issue is this?
It's a ego issue.
Yeah, and otherwise it's also an emotional issue.
Yes.
Yeah, this isn't a logical problem because you know that like to make mistakes is a way to learn.
It's
Maybe
an
the
area.
way to learn. But it's funny because like I was about to say the same steps again, and you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So then you needed a way to push forward is to tap into your resolve.
hmm
It's funny because like a way, the reason why you want to consult this talk in the first place is because you had a resolution that you want to improve, right?
Right.
In order to improve, you need to at least do it.
hmm
You need to tap into your resolve,
Yeah.
your why.
The reason why I'm playing.
Yes.
And continually do it even if it's not working in the moment, because I need to trust my process.
It's good that like you have like an analytical mind on like, okay, like, this maybe could be improved further, but you don't know that for sure until you try. And the first step is to at least try, and you need to tap into your why.
Yeah, you're right.
Anything else?
If I get into like sort of the death spiral, just taking a break still work there?
A what spiral?
That sort of the death spiral of like I'm not trusting that process
Well, yeah, why do you think it becomes a spiral in the first place?
because of that first thing, because of that doubt.
And what do you need to do in order for it to not become a spiral?
Focus and tap into my why.
Yeah, you need to try to resolve the problem before it even gets way worse. And at that point, when it gets way worse, I would honestly still recommend this process, but obviously it'll take a lot more. And
Yeah.
maybe a break is warranted. But like, when you take a break, that's not actually solving anything.
It's just a step in this process.
Yeah, in a way. So if you feel like you really need a break, then I guess go ahead, but know that taking a break is not actually solving anything.
Yeah, it's just putting down the.
Yeah, you're just like, I don't know, whatever
It's
you
that
see.
same way you're like hiding. Not
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah.
that, but like
Like it could temporarily solve issues, but those same triggers will come back.
yeah, it's not a long-term growth sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, so running through, if I get tilted, I need to facilitate. So take a deep breath or refocus, and then refocus is another step. So
Refocus is the last step.
yes. So facilitate, then accept it, and then refocus on the second, which would be my why or my game plan.
hmm
Okay.
Yeah, you have any last concerns? Sounds like this is a good process that we've written out.
Yeah, it is. Any tips on just? I guess I can't help that I know I'm being too analytical, and because it's not going to be solved by logic.
Yes.
Any tips just to go with it, or that's sort of just a me?
Yeah, if you want to like improve on like the feeling aspect, the emotional aspect, journal every day.
Okay.
Journal your feelings, your thoughts, but primarily the feelings that are associated with certain thoughts. Like, what are you feeling in major events throughout your day? That's a very good first step.
And then once I have that, just try to connect those feelings into why it's happening and try to apply this process to that, like we talked about.
Yeah, it makes it very easy to recognize
And that's
when you're
basically
journaling.
more practice on this. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Anything else?
Honestly, I can't. No, I think that's covers our bases very well.
Yeah, hopefully this could help you maintain focus through resolving your ego, through taking a step back. You need to recognize, facilitate through deep breaths, maybe identify why, and move on with the resolve to focus.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem, man.